It's the one podcast.
Are you subbed, my
So
G?
I've been paying attention to space, and I've noticed like a little bit of a trend with the long hair and do you think that plays a role in the success of fintech companies? The founders having long hair?
It's funny.
A little flow.
A little flow, probably, yeah. It probably helps. Then again, now that I'm thinking about it, all the people who I know who are founding or co-founding fintech companies, of all the guys who I know who are doing that, I can't think of anybody who has long hair. Maybe it's not true.
Yeah. It's going out of fashion.
It's over.
Cool.
You meet somebody wealthy, their family at one point was not wealthy. And then the one shows up. The one. One person changes the family tree forever. In my family, I'm the one.
Cool. So we got another episode of the One Podcast here with Felix from Troop. Not Troops. Don't want to get any people confused there, but a very cool company nonetheless. But Felix, thanks for coming on the podcast, doing it in person here in FiDi with me. Can you just give us a little bit of background as to you? What are your interests? And kind of what Troop is, just high level.
For sure. So I'm originally from France, where I was born and raised.
Nice.
I came to the U.S. in 2010 for college. It was a big culture shock, but a fun one.
Yeah.
I'd say the things that stood out to me the most were that in France, we talk a lot about civic responsibility and, some stuff as
Principles of French Revolution.
Exactly. Expressing discontent as loudly as you can, but most importantly, participating in, governance and democratic processes. And that's kind of been top of mind for a long time, thinking, how do you combine that on a professional level? How do you weigh the importance of frankly generating revenue for yourself, building a career while also thinking about how to work on the civic involvement side of things. And Troop was kind of born out of a desire to collectivize, to think a little bit about what our collective responsibility is as far as governance is concerned. And has morphed a bit into perhaps a less engaged product and more of a solution provided to asset managers to basically help them make sure that their clients' wishes and preferences and policy desires are expressed in the way that their assets are managed.
Cool. So I definitely get into Troop a little bit more, but just we like to kind of deep dive in the background to find just entrepreneurs of all walks, sort of where they come from logistically, how they did it. A lot of people we talk to, obviously, they're entrepreneurs in college, they're doing startups. What was kind of your, I guess, childhood to university experience? Did you think about starting a business or doing a startup? Were you engaged in that type of world?
Sure thing. So in France, there's, even though entrepreneurship is a French word, I don't know that we necessarily have the same amount of it as there is in the US. That being said, both my parents are entrepreneurs, in particular my mom, who built a company up when I was a year or two after I was born, and grew that with a couple thousand employees across a bunch of different countries in the world. It was a luxury pastries and chocolates company. Imagine the Rolls Royce of chocolate.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Sick. It's the perfect French company that I'm
Exactly. It was literally the stereotype, open and shut. And then my grandfather, my mom's dad, was a huge caterer and ran a bunch of different catering businesses in Montreal. And the two of them, when I talked about career plans, were, I don't know, for them, it was clear, you move into your next stage in life when you start working for yourself. That was always part of the conversation.
Nice. Cool. So you had the kind of that model to look after where hey, entrepreneurship is possible, or it's a viable path.
And not only a viable path, but also it's the end goal.
It's the end goal.
Yeah. You learn about.
So it was modeled for you in that, a kind of virtuous way, as opposed to people looking.
That came with a lot of, moments of uncertainty and stress. We weren't always necessarily in the money. But
sure.
we persevered as a family nonetheless.
So I guess coming over in the States for school, like what are you thinking? What type of industries and stuff are you looking at then?
Originally hospitality, like food and beverage. That's like what I knew.
Right.
And then I don't know, there's something about competitive American colleges where the fabric, of the student body is really focused on going into high earning careers, which tend to be outside of F&B in the first couple of years outside of college. So I just ended up joining the rest of the herd and went down to New York and moved into a financial adjacent sector.
Got it. So how did you went into that financial sector? Like I know, just looking into your career, and then you got into sales. Can you just walk us through that type of transition, and we can lead it back into true kind of
sure thing. Started? So I guess I'll start by saying something that the chairman of our board says a lot, which is that everything is sales.
Yeah, we say that too. So.
Look, I didn't mean to end up in sales. In fact, there's so much about the profession that just seems weird to me. The idea of like selling anyone on anything is not a comfortable idea.
Yeah.
And I realized like that had more to do with me not being excited enough about whatever product I was selling. If you can get behind the product and the idea and you're solving a problem rather than selling a solution, then it's fine.
Yeah.
It took me a while to realize that. I resisted it. But at Bloomberg, where I started my career, if you're not going to go the product route or the engineering or the media and journalism route, your only option is to move into sales and specifically to go sell the Bloomberg terminal itself, which is their core product. So I kind of just followed the motions and then ended up on a sales desk selling the Bloomberg terminal, because that was just part of the plan. I never really like consciously opted into that.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting because that I can see how that kind of leads into you just thinking about the prospect and what like their problems are, just knowing like what your company is about.
Yeah, and like the way that Bloomberg does that is that they put you on essentially like a customer support help chat, like in doing that job for roughly a year.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it's difficult. For some people, it continues to be difficult. But at the end of the day, I think to your point, it's the best way to find out everything about what it is that, the Bloomberg terminal users like and don't like. Yeah. So you're able to actually sell to them.
Yeah. And I think Bloomberg himself is just like a big like a very, my mom worked with him at like Salomon Brothers, just like a quick aside. So she's not an entrepreneur or anything, but has always told me that kind of story. But I think it's interesting how that business is run and just sold. Like I think it's just very efficient from a business standpoint. But in any case, so you did a couple companies after that. What were those, and like how did that happen?
Yeah, when I realized I had learned a good amount at Bloomberg, but I felt like I was plateauing a little bit, or maybe I was just running out of steam, or frankly, I just didn't want to wear a suit and tie anymore.
Nice.
I got contacted by a small Israeli company called Riskified.
Okay.
And they had just raised their A and were moving to expand into the US. I had no idea what they were selling. It took me like a week to figure it out. But the market sizing and the angle made sense. Most importantly, when I showed up in a full suit to interview, was the only person who'd ever walked into that office in a suit.
Nice. Yeah, I can tell the suit is not the vibe in a true office. So that makes sense. Okay, cool. So how did that go? Was like that? Okay.
Well, the interview went well. I was just uncomfortable because I was wearing uncomfortable clothing. But other than that, the experience working there was amazing. I loved the people that I worked with.
You got like that tech startup vibe, sort of.
Yeah, like I was handed a MacBook and some shitty coffee and was told to just sit on the floor and make it happen.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing, and it was moving at a pretty fast pace. But we had an amazing little team of SDRs that I learned a lot from, and eventually moved over to like kind of oversee my own portions of the market, mostly French-speaking Canada and then Central and South America.
Got it. So because of the geography based.
Yeah. I also like language and culture. Like those are two languages that I'm very comfortable in, and so it was easier for me to go do that while the more culturally American part of the team was focusing on the U.S. market. Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of. We just had an Israeli entrepreneur on last week. And I worked with a lot of Israeli startups previously, and I've also worked with French entrepreneurs. And I find that those two groups tend to get along kind of well for some reason. Why is that?
I would say two things. Even though like I think the Israeli mentality is we're going to go fix it, and the French mentality is we're going to complain about it.
Right.
The overlap is that we'll complain about it with as much frustration and seriousness.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. The difference is that the Israelis will go and like actually fix it. The other thing, and this is weird, but the way we pronounce the letter R is almost the exact same.
Yeah. I've noticed that too. That was like, I was trying to train some of my salespeople. We were just talking before the podcast started on like how to sell to the Israeli tech companies versus like the French solopreneurs who are like, you know what I'm saying? And
oh yeah.
One thing they got mixed up was the Israeli script and the French script because of the R pronunciation. The R. So that's interesting. Okay, cool. So then what was the next move for you after that?
After Riskified, I joined a ID verification company. Okay. And by the way, Riskified, anecdotally, they sell e-commerce fraud prevention solutions, so payment fraud prevention, and have since IPO'd. I left like a few months before the IPO.
Nice.
Then I joined Verif, which is an Estonian KYC company, in ID verification. That was fun, but I think the biggest thing there was that they had just raised a pretty significant round of capital.
Yeah.
And the CEO was kind of an understudy for me. Like, it was fascinating to me that somebody who was not from the US, who didn't like necessarily have, you know, the networks that we have here to raise capital, was able to raise so much and so fast.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly charismatic guy. And I figured, you know, if this guy can do it, and there's so much conviction here, and the market looks like they're interested in these profiles, maybe I can do it too.
Yeah. Yeah, and that KYC, the like identity verification niche is like pretty big. Like I had an Irish client, ID Pal, for like a few years. And you know, when I heard this was before they raised money when we started working with them, but I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how could this be like such a big? Because I just don't understand the finance, you know, that sector so much. But
well, it blew up in particular, I suppose, like thanks to not kind of controversial to say, but thanks to COVID, in the sense that like all these processes were driven indoors, and so webcam-based ID verification suddenly became the next hot topic. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it's like every kind of past that. Like we're just doing like content and stuff. It's like, you know what I'm saying, every single app, the dating apps and stuff. You know, they all have it's not just financial.
And it's like 10 companies that provide this stuff. Yeah. And mostly they're scraping databases, you know. But there's a lot of other proprietary cool stuff, but
Yeah, that's a separate conversation, but it's just interesting to figure out like how do you differentiate yourself as like one of those companies, you know what I'm saying?
Vibes.
All vibes. Okay, cool. So I met your co-founder a little bit before. You guys met in college. Like we like to ask people who have co-founders, you know, how did that relationship kind of come about?
Yeah, we met week one of school. I ended up meeting a lot of our friends in common because I'm not from the US, and a lot of his early day friends were also not from the US. And then he and I became really close. I also became really close with his wife. She is a year older than us, and she actually helped me get my first job at Bloomberg.
Nice.
And then I went to their wedding and all that. Like, we've been friends for a long time.
Did they have a lot of like entrepreneurial stuff at Cornell?
Yeah, a ton.
Yeah.
Also, Zen's parents are entrepreneurs as well. Like, I don't know, when he and I had these conversations, there was still a lot that didn't need to necessarily be explained because we just, I don't know, had the same vision for where life is supposed to take you, and a big part of that for both of us is just kind of owning your own. Your own
I think people who are looking at entrepreneurship, if they're like young sort of kids, should look at like colleges that like Penn, Wharton, they had like a ton of resources and stuff.
Yeah, I would say for Cornell it was less. I don't know as much about the resources proper, although granted, like I participated in a pitch competition senior year, which I won with my partner. That was fun. But the biggest thing is that at Cornell, there's the oldest independent student-run like business in the U.S. It's called Student Agencies. Now, the name is not very original. You've got student agencies at a bunch of other colleges, but the one at Cornell is the oldest. And it basically started as a laundry service.
Nice.
And they give you the ability to go like start your own company within that structure or operate one of the existing ones. So I applied there and I learned a lot about corporate, start company operation, and that was fun. So
cool. Cool. So then are you struck in the middle of the night with the idea for Troop? Like, are you pivoting into that? Like, how does the idea come up, and when do you actually like take the leap? Like, I'm going to start this.
Yeah. So you remember the GameStop moment? From 2021?
Yeah, I just watched that movie.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
I
fun.
noticed you have a little bit of a resemblance to Vlad from Ron. That was one of the first things that I noticed about this guy.
Oh man.
Or at least the actor in that movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get that.
I can, so when I started in this journey, my hair was down to here, and people used to, I think I was trying to emulate the WeWork guy.
Yeah, Adam Newman.
Yes, exactly. No, look, the idea originally came from the GameStop thing happening. At the same time, a tiny hedge fund in SF was going after ExxonMobil, and won a board activism fight, got 3 people put on the board of Exxon there, despite only owning 0.01% of ExxonMobil, which is tiny. And I don't know, it just made me want to like explore the intersection of those two ideas, right? Like the excitement of owning stock online, and then the ability to do stuff collectively with that collective shareholder voting power.
Yeah.
And Troop was the intersection of those two things. Today we do something a little bit different, but we are still inspired by where we came from.
Got it. So like, what are the first few steps? You put a business plan, pitch deck together. What are like the first 5 things you do?
The first thing is go and bother 200 people with a piece of paper and a pen and just ask them a couple really simple questions.
Feedback.
Yeah, validate the outlines of your idea, help inform your discovery process. We didn't put pen to paper on anything business plan related, frankly, until after we had raised our first round. Like we didn't even try to solve that problem until later.
Got it. So I guess that, so maybe that's like a more relevant question is you were mentioning before how you knew you needed to raise money for
yes.
That's just the industry and like the business model.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were trying to build a B2C thing that required like some form of tech integrations with brokerage accounts and brokerage apps. We knew that the conventional model back then, it's going away today, but back then it's just you pump cash on lowering your customer acquisition costs as much as possible and trying to figure out through social media spending how you can do that with targeted ads. We figured that we would have to do that to give it a shot. If I had to do it all over again, I'd probably have a slightly different approach. But
nice. Yeah. So are you nurturing like investor connections in those previous years, or your co-founder? Like how did
no
validation to?
Well, we lucked out. I had been bothering so many people with this idea and this thought that one of my very, very close friends, Cedric, who had also been thinking about frankly, like a better version of this, like a smarter B2B version, which is where we're at now. He is running a company and was already running a company back then. He had a friend who had just sold his company and was looking to get a chairman position and like help a new startup kind of, on their journey. So we got connected. He told me I'm going to open my doors to investors. I just want to be the chairman of your company and make sure that you guys are governed properly. And that's the deal.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I think that's like how most people who are, quickly successful with that do it. But so, all right. So you go out, you raise money. What's like the next couple of things that you do or challenges that you have to get to market?
The first thing was dealing with like the pretty high amount of, not so much stress, but, I would say, imposter syndrome. It all happens very quickly, and all of a sudden you're sitting on, a decent amount of cash in your business account and wondering like, wait, but
like, why do I have this?
Yeah. Like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Look, after that, I mean, I just went back to principles. The CEO job is to always be raising, always be selling, and always be hiring. And so I got to work on the selling and the hiring piece. We made partners and friends in the hedge fund industry and in the proxy solicitation industry, where we knew that like, hey, we're working on something, but eventually it'll be ready. So we just want you to know about that now. And then on the hiring front, we knew we needed people who knew how to build B2C products. So we went and hired people.
How do you think about hiring? Like, what's your process?
First step really is to go ask people who've hired a lot of other people before. Like I really had very limited experience with that.
Yeah.
So I reached out to old managers of mine. I also reached out to our investors and asked them if they could connect us with like other founders who had experience hiring a bunch of people. So,
wise advice there, I think.
I figured it. I'm not. I don't know what
Can't
I'm
figure it
doing.
out,
So
so it's like it's one of those things where it only comes from like many decades, I guess, of
for sure,
doing it. So
it's
like, how do you
also
figure it out?
it's also like you're dealing with human beings.
Yeah.
And if this is an activity I've never done before, I kind of want to know like
What to
the do's and don'ts, what to expect, because you're dealing with people as opposed to you make a mistake on a product, like it doesn't matter, right? You can just rebuild. But if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing in an interview and said like nothing crazy, but just like the codes and how to consider people.
Yeah.
What are good questions to ask to learn more about people? Like I didn't really know about that in a business setting. So
Nice. Cool. And then you mentioned like the sales kind of side of it.
Yes.
How are you like, so, and obviously hedge funds, right, is like a potential customer.
Yes.
How are you, are you just going through like your network, or you have like a more, obviously you have that sales background. So like how are you thinking about sales and getting in touch with, getting demos on?
Frankly, warm introductions everywhere, all the time.
Yeah.
It's the most straightforward way to do it. The second is to figure out what the industry events are that are most attended by your best targets. Right. And then you either buy a ticket and attend the actual conference itself, or you don't, but you hang out right outside the conference. And you try your best to strike up a conversation with somebody who you have as a target.
You got to go one-to-one. I'm saying.
Yeah.
The intros, I guess, are pretty key in this industry versus others.
100%. I will say, like, there are a couple of PR firms in this space that are in like the space that we're playing in that are really, really good and really effective, that are very picky themselves about the clients that they choose to onboard.
Got it.
And so generally when they onboard a new client, we're lucky to work with a really cool company called Craft and Capital.
That's a PR agency.
Correct. Yeah. They have a very good network. And when they contact journos and other people in the industry, they tend to get pretty positive responses. Yeah. So that's also been a really effective engagement.
Well, yeah, I feel like as far as like selling to like the hedge funds, I guess the PR stuff is also another bit, is really big, right? Because
huge.
That's basically, it does the sales for you.
So yes, and I would say like for hedge funds, they're incredibly shrewd and precise investors. So at the end of the day, like maybe PR is what grabs their attention, but it's absolutely not what closes the sale.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Conversely, in the asset management space, branding matters a lot because you don't necessarily differentiate on returns so much as you differentiate on like the branding of your portfolio management.
Got it.
So it actually matters a lot to have, decent brand equity behind you when you're going to talk to like $1 trillion asset manager.
Right. So regarding that branding question, I was looking through your site and just like admiring the branding. I'm a marketer by trade, so I'm admiring also the copywriting, saying, it's an elegant platform. Some of the verbiage that the adjectives used is who's the mastermind behind that, and like the dark black kind of theme.
To be honest, I think we owe the overall majority of our current copywriting effort to two individuals. One who used to work with us, his name is Tostin Burks, this incredible writer. And then our current copywriter, Will Gottsigan, who was actually hired originally by Tostin. The two of them are phenomenal writers. Yeah. I think Tostin ran, if I remember correctly, it might have been like either the Taco Bell or the Domino's Twitter account.
Nice.
Which you have to be incredibly funny, smart, sharp, like
and
super.
The thing is, you also have to get like, I think a lot of like founders, they want to do the copy themselves. Not that they want to do the copy themselves, but they want to like have a very high say in the copy. And it's kind of like you really just have to find that mastermind.
Yes.
Who's going to like really do the most unique, like your brand of copy versus just like the best ChatGPT copy that you can do. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
Because I would say 95% of the copywriters, like they're good, but it's still going to be like cookie cutter. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you need something distinctive.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think we lucked out because the individual who had found Tostin, because they knew Tostin from their days in college, had originally pitched Tostin on like the more, I think, original Web3 DAO, or, early days version of what Troop might have been. And I think that was perhaps enticing or appealing. And then as our mission evolved over time, he'd been there for, the long haul and was able to kind of adapt the copy to our new morphing product in a really, really cool way.
Got it. So everything is, I guess, is launched and out there. Like you guys are
Correct.
completely go to market. People are on the platform, whatnot.
This Friday, we're actually putting out a piece that explains like very specifically and clearly what it is that we are doing now today and like where we're headed.
Nice. So how did that launch go? Like, was there things that you expected to happen that did or didn't?
There were two things to consider. The first was in our old iteration of Troop, when it was still a consumer app and a consumer platform.
Sure.
We knew that there were only so many times we could make a big public announcement about anything. And so, right, because people get tired, right? There's fatigue and people don't want to hear.
Be doing it like every day.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what else is new, right?
Especially when you have like that internal sense of these are people that you know or referrals, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, those are people who are like, if it's a tighter audience, they're going to definitely talk quickly. If you just like, this isn't, boom, 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 boom.
Exactly. And we knew so in total agreement with everything you said. And so as a result of that, we timed our public announcements very, very carefully. We were lucky enough to get the attention of somebody at TechCrunch, who announced our raise and the launch of the platform in the old iteration of Troop. So like over a year and a half ago.
Got it.
We haven't done anything loud or public since because we knew that there was something else bubbling under the hood.
Yeah.
So this Friday's announcement, we're not putting any advertising dollars behind it. It's a kind of a quiet, organic launch.
Yeah.
Because technically our product has been live in its B2B phase since end of January, which is when we've started slow and steady progress towards POCs and tests with clients.
Got it. So it's kind of like this a stealth launch that's hopefully going to bubble up.
Yeah, and you know why? The reason is that like we're excited about our product, but we haven't proven anything yet. So it objectively is not actually that interesting.
You don't
to
want to
say,
blow up with it. Yeah.
Like, hey, we've got this product. It's like, great. Do you have clients? Do you have proof that it works? Can you show me like demos? And we have answers to all those questions, but they're not as clean cut and as clear as we'd like it. So we're not drawing a ton of attention to that. And instead, I think we're going to wait until we have one or two big clients or big proof points, and we'll make a big deal about that.
And you also have so much more stuff to talk about, just like doing your customer interviews after that,
100%.
seeing what came up for them, like the big pain points,
Exactly, and like what the data will show
what the
too.
data shows. So that totally makes sense to me. So you kind of do it in two phases.
Yeah.
In terms of the team, like you mentioned like the copywriters that you had and stuff like that. Are you planning to like really build out like a pretty robust sort of sales team, or like what's the?
I think when we start hitting a wall where I'm not able to be in all these meetings at the same time, I think hopefully if that's a problem, that's a good problem to have, and hopefully we cross that point soon and start thinking about hiring well before then, because you don't want to waste time onboarding, etc. But for now, we're managing with the team that we have. It's like a tight, compact, super, super qualified team, and we work very, very fast. But we'll see. I think maybe in the summer, if we're able to like hit the numbers that we're looking for, it's likely that the next person to bring on might be sales talent. Yeah.
Got it. And then, so just like doing that from that year and a half ago, I guess, pivot from the B2C to the B2B, are you thinking about like future fundraising, revenue, pricing? Are you thinking about that stuff differently? Yeah.
So I want to be transparent about the fact that as a company, we've reset our own valuation. We moved away from our... Right, exactly. Yeah. We figured look, the previous valuation was very flattering and obviously was not set by us. The terms were set by the venture capital funds. And that nothing will change how excited they were and we were to work together. But I think because we have a new vision, a new way to apply our vision, frankly, a much more simple and streamlined business, we wanted a valuation that enabled us to actually grow into another one. So we've reset the valuation. We're wrapping around a fundraising right now.
Got it.
In the next 2-3 weeks. And then the next round will be, after that will be the Series A. But right now it's a seed and we're essentially starting from scratch.
So taking it back to a broad perspective, what has been the biggest challenge since you've started the company?
The biggest challenge. Yeah, I would say it's
or struggle, whatever kind of word you use, but what's the toughest thing, I guess, about the type of company and
I on a personal level, I'm still a big planner, but I used to plan
Overplan.
my 5, 10, 15 year, visibility and my calendar like so well. I don't know that I can even plan a quarter from now. Like
you just don't know what's going to happen.
No idea. Yeah. Like I'm loving what I'm doing. It's a lot of fun and it's going in a bunch of different directions. But that's one that the biggest struggle has been like the kind of lack of certainty that comes with entrepreneurship that I didn't realize I used to depend on a lot. So that's been the hardest part. But frankly, from a company building perspective, there's no one particular thing that stands out. Everything about it is hard. Everything that they say is hard about entrepreneurship is true. It's difficult. I don't have a perfect or clean answer to that. Like it's just every part of it is hard, but that's what we signed up for. So I'm excited about it.
So I guess taking it back, like, do you have obviously you're taking it like a month at a time, I guess, but what is there like what's the broad vision, I guess, that as far as where you're at right now?
Yeah.
Like what's the biggest kind of application you think of the platform and what you're building?
I would say if we can start seeing our product used for portfolio risk management, like not just asset voting, but also for portfolio risk management, that's when I suspect we'll start to see really, really, really exciting, next step applications and growth. But even if we don't actually get there, the process of getting from where we are today to having our product in, a lot of different asset management shops in the US, that's a long and pretty winding road and one that we are firmly embarked on.
Yeah. Sweet. I guess tying everything together, wrapping stuff up, biggest advice that you've learned for other people starting who are maybe trying to get into a similar type of niche or maybe have a similar background to you. Like let's say they're trying to get into fintech, B2C or B2B. Like what's something that you've learned that like you don't think is well known out there?
I think that you can never overdo customer centricity and user research or client research.
You can never overdo it.
You can never overdo it.
You can never learn too much.
And I think you're going to talk to a lot of different people. A lot of people are going to not understand your idea. A lot of people are going to think it's bad. And it's arguably more important to get their feedback in the beginning than anybody else's. The other key thing is figure out specifically why somebody likes your idea and why, whatever it might be, whether it's consumer or B2B. A lot of us, I think, and we struggle with this too, we think we understand what our value prop is.
But you don't.
And every week there's a new version of it that a prospect will say back to us that we will have never even considered. And that part is
that's true like all companies.
100%.
It's like the best founders, I think, are addicted to the customer feedback stories and listening. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like the more that you put your head in there as a founder, like the better that you understand. And it is true. You can never like understand that enough because it's always changing.
100%.
And you could always get detached from it too if like you spend too much time like away from the vision.
100%. And like you're totally right. The other I think the other big thing that comes with that is there's a middle ground, like a very complicated middle ground that you want to find between your intuition and your gut instinct about your product, the feedback that your users are giving you, and occasionally the feedback you're going to be getting from your investors or other stakeholders or frankly even your teammates. That is a complicated balancing act.
Yeah.
But trust your instincts.
Got it.
If this is your idea and it's a problem space that you love and that you're obsessed with, chances are you may have spent more time than anybody else thinking about it.
Right.
So your gut instinct is probably right.
If it is something that, if I guess it is an industry or like a place that you're engaged heavily, like you're part of that community or part of that interest group, then I think it's like your instincts are, you don't want to start doubting because that's how you can overanalyze and take way too long and all that type of stuff that you mentioned before.
Well, I would say the last piece of advice is definitely, to the extent that you can, try to build up your own internal, like personal board of directors, so to speak. This is an old mentor of mine from college who referred to it this way, and I think it's brilliant. But basically, there are people whose opinions you should learn to trust, even if they are not at all informed about the product that you're building or the industry that you're building in.
Yeah. Like, I get what you're saying there, which is that, like, it's kind of like it's so hard to figure out certain decisions on your own to, like, develop a heuristic.
Yes.
These are the people that you go to for it, and they're not always going to, like, you're not always going to be able to explain to them everything, but they just have better gut than you because they've been in it for, they know it better.
Yeah, or they may have a very different perspective because they are not in your industry, or they're not an entrepreneur, whatever it might be. Maybe they spent 40 years in like a more conventional office job. That gives them a perspective on how to answer the question that you're struggling with. That is like, you never know how valuable it might be.
Sure.
Right. And like, there could be somebody else in your life, like your music teacher from when you were like 17. Right. Like totally unrelated. But this is somebody who you've turned to for advice regularly. Those people that you turn to for like general life advice actually are good people to consult with like really big business problems.
Yeah.
You just have to change the terms of the business problem so that they're like understandable by anyone.
Well, that's another thing that you mentioned, you sort of alluded to there, was just like, if you spend too much time around entrepreneurs and like in accelerators and in these startup spaces, like those people have a different perspective than the majority of people. You know what I'm saying? And
well, you're going to get
people have. Yeah. You're going to get like, they're just going to echo kind of your
100%. Yeah. It's an echo chamber. You're just surrounded by people who are excited about toying around with ideas, who by default think, what might be possible? How might we be able to do this?
Yeah.
How can we do this? As opposed to, here are all the reasons why we can't.
Yeah.
Like, you need by default to be somebody who thinks about how might we make this possible? Otherwise, it's a really, really complicated uphill battle of entrepreneurship. Yeah. But you want to surround yourself with like 50-50, right? People who are going to, by default kind of doubt your idea. And then some people who by default are going to be in favor of it. Because the feedback and the argumentation you have with both of these types of people lead to different places.
Yeah.
Both a valuable piece of the feedback.
Yeah. So Felix, I have one last question for you. Let me work this out.
Sure.
So, I've never been in fintech. I've had clients that are in fintech. My brother worked as like an AE at Brex for like the last couple of years.
I just spoke to somebody in sales at Brex yesterday.
Nice. So I've been paying attention to space, and I've noticed like a little bit of a trend with the long hair and do you think that plays a role in the success of fintech companies? The founders having long hair.
It's funny.
A little flow.
A little flow, probably, yeah. It probably helps. Then again, now that I'm thinking about it, all the people who I know who are founding or co-founding fintech companies, of all the guys who I know who are doing that, I can't think of anybody who has long hair. Maybe it's time for me to cut mine.
Yeah. It's going out of fashion.
It's over.
Cool. Felix, thanks for coming on. Where can people follow you? If you're hiring, like where do they go?
To be honest, perhaps the most high velocity way to keep track of what we're doing is our LinkedIn page.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. So Troop, TROOP on LinkedIn.
Got it. And I want to ask you one last thing. I noticed you guys are doing a lot of TikTok as well.
We used to do a lot of TikTok.
A little bit of TikTok. That was for the B2C end.
Yes, but we're actually realizing that there's a lot of room to grab in B2B SaaS marketing on TikTok.
I just interviewed like 3 guys who launched on product on like last week. One of them was a French guy that I connected to.
It's a TikTok marketing agency for B2B.
Yeah, well, they're doing. He's got a marketing like Martech SaaS. But they're doing TikTok like for a lot of B2B stuff, and
why not?
It's interesting. I wonder if they add more features and stuff like a TikTok sales navigator.
Well, they definitely have a robust data analytics suite that we know from our B2C time. Yeah. Assuming TikTok is even still around a year from now.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Felix. This is the One Podcast. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cool. Sometimes we cry, sometimes we let it out. Sometimes we laugh, oh yeah, we